This module deals with consumer markets and consumer buying behavior. Now, like I said, marketing starts with the consumer, ends with the consumer. So in all this, we need to understand how to deal with this consumer. How do they buy? How do they make their buying decisions? So in part 1 of this module, we will be focusing on the factors that influence the buying behavior. These are all the factors that the companies cannot influence, but these factors influence how consumers make their buying decisions. So let's start with a funny graph. I don't know if it's real or not, but many people claim it to be real. But there was a research that was done, and you can see there was a task given to a male consumer versus a female consumer, and the task was to go to Gap and buy a pair of jeans. If you look, and there was a sensor put on the male and the female consumer. The male one, which is in blue, walks inside the mall, goes into Gap, buy the pant or buy the pair of pants, spends 6 minutes, spends around $33. The female consumers walk inside all the shops, gets 3 hours and 28 minutes, spends $878. But the most interesting part is that she never goes to Gap and get the pair of pants. Now, this is an interesting analogy. Like I said, this is not a generalizable statement. Maybe not all male and female consumers do like that, but this is an interesting one to understand how it's different for male and female consumers and their buying behavior. So what makes us behave differently? If we are all consumers, why do we behave differently? And that's because of our backgrounds. That's because there are a lot of personal characteristics that make us make different type of buying decisions. It starts from cultural factors, to social factors, to personal factors, to psychological factors, all the way to the buyer. So if you look at the cultural factors, in different countries, like I said, culture is a set of beliefs and attitudes. Of course, depending on which culture we belong to, our beliefs and attitudes are shaped in the same way. Each culture also has smaller subcultures. For example, I'm from Pakistan. Pakistan has a very strong South Asian culture. But Pakistan also has 4 different provinces. I belong to northern province of KPK or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Our culture is heavily influenced by Afghan culture or Turkish culture. But if you go south of Pakistan to Sindh, that culture matches very closely to Indian culture. So those are subcultures which also influence how we make our decisions. In subculture, we also have very important marketing segments like nationalities or like religions or gender. So all of these would then determine how the consumers are making their decisions, how they are behaving, and how companies are focusing on these consumer segments. Now here's an example. A few years ago, we had a conference. This conference had a lot of Asian delegates. Of course, the food was very good. One interesting insight was that many people didn't eat their lunch. And the lunch was chicken breast. Now, when we started digging into it, why not many people ate it, we realized that there were a lot of Asian delegates. And for Asian delegates, they normally prefer red meat over white meat. I'm not saying that they prefer beef or chicken or something, but they like meat pieces with bones, like chicken wings or chicken breast or drumstick or chicken breast. An example of this would be McDonald's and KFC in China. So if you look at McDonald's and KFC in China, KFC is a much preferred brand in China as compared to McDonald's. If we dig deeper into what people like about them in terms of, let's say, atmosphere, in terms of taste, in terms of their speed of service, in terms of their pricing, their service and everything, you would see that McDonald's is much ahead of KFC in their advertising, in their entertainment, in their speed of service, in their convenience. There are only 2 factors where KFC is beating McDonald's. One of them is the taste of the food. The other one is the cultural element in the cuisine, which shows that how important culture can become when it comes to making buying decisions for buyers. The second group is social factors. How do we make decisions based on our social factors? Here, one important concept is of reference groups. We as consumers, when we have not used any product or service before, we normally try to find reference groups that we can refer to. In here, we have 2 broad categories. We have out group, we have in group. In group is the group that I am already part of. For example, I'm an academic. I'm a professor. So I'm already part of this group. So if I see a product, for example, there's a product called Grammarly, which is really for researchers and professors. I'm already part of that group. It's easier for me to accept that product because I'm part of the group. But most of the consumers are out group, meaning they are not part of that group already. So in that situation, there are three subgroups. One is aspiration group, one is dissociative group, and then one is general opt-out group. Let's start with the third one, general opt-out. So as a consumer, we have some do's and don'ts. Let's say many Muslims around the world, they don't eat pork. So if there's an advertisement or any restaurant that is serving pork, that's a general opt-out group for these consumers because they just don't consume it. The second one is dissociative group. The third one is aspiration group. Now these are the two most common groups that advertisers focus on. Me as a consumer, if I really want to do something, I'll look at the group that is aspiration to me because I want to be part of that group. Opt-out group is, or dissociative group is the group that I don't want to be part of. So I'll give you an example of fitness clubs. You may have seen that some fitness clubs, when they are creating their advertisements, they have really good looking models with very good physiques, with very, really well-defined body structure. Why do they do that? They do that because they tap into aspiration group, meaning that a lot of people who are not going to gym, they look at those very well-defined body shapes and they want to be like that. So that is aspiration group. In some cases, the fitness clubs also use some heavy people who don't look like athletes, okay? And that is because they want their consumers not to look like that and come to gym. So that is dissociative group. In social factors, we also have the role of kids. Now, 87% of people say that when their kids are 8-year-old, they have a say in the buying decision when it comes to holidays. That means kids are becoming more and more important. I myself have 2 kids, and normally when I make my own decisions to travel, for me the most important aspect is this a kids-friendly place? And wherever I'm going, can kids have something to do there? So that means that that's also another very important social factor. In personal factors, then we have age and life cycle. Of course, when you are younger, you have different type of buying behavior as compared to when you are older. In life cycles, it's the same. When you are struggling in your life, in your initial stages, you want to save money. When you are well established, you want to spend more money. Occupation would also determine how you are buying things, your lifestyle. Another important concept of psychology and marketing is personality and self-concept. Here we have 4 different categories. Number 1 is your actual image. That means how a consumer sees themselves. So I as a consumer, how do I see myself? But another important concept here is ideal image, meaning how I want to see myself. So of course, as a consumer, when I look at myself as an actual image, and then I look at myself as an ideal image, there's a gap in there. And then I need some product or service in order to fill that gap. That's where marketers capitalize. Then 2 other important concepts are social image and ideal social image. Same like personal image. So social image is how I think people see me, other people. Ideal social image is how I want other people to see me. Again, there's a gap, and marketers need to capitalize on that. Now, it's very important to understand the concept of image congruence. Image congruence simply means that consumers would normally buy products or services that match their own image. Another factor here is psychological factors. Now, psychological factors have to do with perceptions of people. How do I see things? What do I think about products? What do I think about services? How do I interpret on information? In some cases, marketers try to influence people's perceptions because perception is the key. How I see a product? Okay, think about this. How many people around you would think that fast food is good for health? I don't think anybody would tell you fast food is good for health. That means that people think negatively about fast food. But why is it that fast food restaurants are growing so quick and so fast? That means it's all about perceptions, the way advertisements are made, the way people are shown their ideal image or ideal social image, the way people are shown the needs that they have. So that's where marketing comes into picture. Now, in marketing, many companies do engage in marketing research just to understand what people are thinking about their products and services, and then they adjust their marketing around that. In psychological factors, we also have beliefs and attitudes. Now, sometimes these days with internet and with very fast spread information that is on the social media channels, beliefs and attitudes can be really important, because one wrong image circulated on internet can lead to heavy losses for companies, in this case McDonald's. Somebody shared this photo on internet saying that this is how chicken nuggets look like, pink goop, okay? And this one led to heavy losses for McDonald's, so much so that it dropped 2.2% shares of McDonald's globally and 4.6% shares of McDonald's in the US. It was a fake picture. I don't know if it was fake or real. McDonald's claimed it was fake, but it took a very long time for McDonald's to reverse those attitudes of consumers, whoever saw those pictures. And they did a lot of things, which is evident in this video. Now we move to part 2 of this module. Part 2 focuses on buyer decision model. So we will look into this decision model, which is an easy model to understand, but that's how consumers' buying decisions are made. Buying decision model or buyer decision model is a 5-stage model. It starts from need recognition all the way to purchase intentions. We will talk about each of this stage in detail in the following slides. Now, before we go into these 5 stages, it's an important question to understand. Do everybody go through these 5 stages every time they buy something? The answer is no. It's not necessary. Obviously, it depends on how involved somebody is, whether the product they are buying, the involvement is high, low, or whatever. If you are going to spend $5,000 on a vacation after 1 year, of course your involvement would be very high. But if you are walking on the campus and you are very feeling hot, you go to a vending machine and you get a cold bottle of water, your involvement is low. So you are not going to go through all these 5 stages of buyer decision model. Moving to stage number 1 of this model, we have the need recognition. Here is where buyer feels that they need something. Now, sometimes it's genuine, and sometimes companies or marketers do put this need deprivation in the consumers. So for instance, I wake up in the middle of the night, I feel very hungry, that's a need recognition, okay? I am working in my office, I realize that my laptop is really, really slow and it doesn't work anymore, that's a need recognition. I need a faster laptop, right? So need recognition is where you see that you don't have something that you need in order to do things. Marketers usually use very innovative techniques for consumers to feel they need something when they don't really need something. But that's another topic for another time. Stage number 2 is information search. So when consumers know that they need something, then they go into information search. Now, obviously, information search can be from personal sources or not so personal sources. You can also look into your previous experiences. You can talk to your friends. You can talk to your family. You can look on internet. So all of those are different sources of information where you look at how can you fulfill the need that you felt in stage number 1. From there, we go to stage number 3. Now, of course, after you search the information, you have a set of alternatives that you can look into in order to fulfill your need. Here, we have something called consideration or evoke set. Now, out of all the alternatives you have, obviously you have a few alternatives that you really want to go into. Marketers can really focus consumers' evaluation by framing the right message at the right time. Once consumers have the consideration set, it's easier to decide which product or service should they go with. So the 4th step here is the purchase decision. Of course, looking at all the information, looking at all the alternatives, you need to decide on one product or service as a consumer, and you make the purchase. But purchase is also not final. Think about it. You buy something. Now, in US market, usually we have something called return policy. So purchase in itself doesn't fill or finalize the whole process, because after purchase, we also have something called post-purchase behavior. Now, in consumer behavior, we also have another concept called purchase intention. So before you purchase something, you also may develop purchase intentions, which means that you haven't bought something yet, but you want to buy that thing. Now, it can obviously change. If a person says, I want to buy this thing, it's not necessary every time they will buy that thing. It would depend on, situational change. Let's say something has happened or another thing came up, so you couldn't buy that thing. Or you really want to buy something, but people around you, your social pressure is there and they do not approve of your purchase. So of course, then your purchase intention does not lead to the final purchase. But let's say you bought something. For companies, that's not enough. You bought something, but companies need to capture the value. So the last stage in this model is post-purchase behavior. That means to understand whether the product or service fulfilled your expectations or not. We talked about it earlier in another module. To think about what were your satisfaction levels. How willing are you to share this with your friends and family? How willing are you to keep buying the same product again and again? So that's your fifth stage in this model. So to wrap up this chapter, we talked about the buying behavior, we talked about all the factors that influence consumers' buying behavior, and then we talked about the model of buyer decision process.